we're ready for the last talk. After this talk, I invite you all to the beer garden, of course. Before that, please follow us in our Stylight office. We're going to do a little photo with the speakers and have a little goodbye there, and then we are going to the beer garden. You can use the Audi shuttles and go there, and we have some more beer and some more Bavarian food. Now I want to welcome on stage Mayflower, Johannes and Sebastian from Mayflower, and happy to have you here, and handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
So, welcome to our talk about Lean.js. We were asked by some people about our talk, about the title, what does Lean.js mean? So it means Lean Startup with JavaScript.
And we're just too lazy to write a lot of text, so we just combined those two, and yeah, that's what the title of our talk is. And our names are Sebastian and
Johannes. Yeah, we are working both for Mayflower. So at Mayflower, we are a service provider, and we are building web applications for our customers. Our customers are from a range from small, young startups to huge companies like Volkswagen or Siemens and something like that.
Which are pretty agile, by the way. So what are we telling you today? So as we just said, we have a wide range of customers, and we have a lot of experience in doing various web projects, and we discovered that all our customers have the same problems. They have an idea or they have a problem to solve, and they want us to help them, and they're pretty much innovative in their solutions. So we did power plant controls and something for car rentals and yeah, stuff like that. And yeah, it's pretty interesting, and we just want to tell you what we learned in those projects. And yeah, maybe you have experienced similar stuff, or you have questions for us. So yeah, go on.
And feel free, yeah.
Huh. So, does everyone know what Lean Startup is? Okay, no. Some are shaking their heads. So, Lean Startup is you're starting just small with an idea and a little budget, and try out if your idea is good, and then throw more money on that project and more resources, and then go on. And this is driven by business hypothesis. So you have ideas and you want to validate them and find out if your idea is good or bad. And this is the core of Lean Startup. And yeah, that's what our talk is basically about.
Yeah, Lean Startup, just for a quick overview, Lean Startup has this build, measure, learn cycle. So you start with an idea, and then you go with small iteration in this cycle. So you have an idea, you make some assumptions, then you build it, but before you define some metrics for this assumption in order to know was it successful or not. You build it, measure it, learn from it, adapt your assumption, and move on and move on.
And this goes in small iterations, so this is pretty much agile, and it's supported by agile methodologies and by some very yeah, proven web technologies. So we have 3 questions to answer in this talk, which is how do we get to the market quickly? So we want to be the first. And the next one is,
how do I know whether my idea is good or not good? So in this approach, it's like, yeah, going just step by step with the thinking about I have the wrong idea and I just go a direction, and in small steps, in baby steps, and find just the right direction, the successful direction for my idea.
And how do I get the response of my customers so that I know if they accept my idea or not?
So let's start on a high level overview with the problem. So we, as a web developer company, as a service provider, doing pretty much everything what's possible with HTTP and its friends for our customers.
In Germany, it's called Neuland.
So our customers have a promising idea, and they have no clue, or mostly they have no clue, in what extent to implement it or how the users will react on it, and yeah, just how to move on and go on with this promising idea. So what we are doing is we assist them and providing our experience and our tool set just in bringing them as fast as possible on the road. So then after we've...
This is our only cat picture, so internet, we can't use a porn picture, so we are using just cats. So, okay.
Yeah, that being said, there you go.
Okay, the first question, as I just said, how do I get my idea on the road? So this is the basic question, because if others come up with that idea and are more quickly than you, then you just lost, and yeah, you have to spend your money elsewhere. So as you just heard earlier, so 30 days in web is just ages in real life, so it's extremely fast. So release cycles of 5 years you have, for example, in power plants, you don't have in web. You have, at the best case, 5 days or hours at worst case. So our customer needs to be able to release in short cycles and yeah, bring up new features day by day, and yeah, find out if that idea is good, and then spend more effort on that idea, or just throw it away and move on with the next one. So the customer has the idea, but everyone involved in the project has to understand the idea. So a developer that doesn't understand the business idea of the project is just in the wrong team. So if you build a software for mining, for example, you have to understand the business domain. Or if you're building a software for cars, you have to know what a car is and what the end customer does with that car. So in order to provide feedback and bring your own ideas into the project. And now the second part of our title. What does this all have to do with JavaScript? So it's very easy. We just know JavaScript, and yeah. So we're talking about JavaScript? No. The reason why we are choosing JavaScript is you can build very fast prototypes with JavaScript, and with that combination of HTML and CSS, you can create visual yeah, prototypes for your customers, and they can test it. So they got something visual to grab on and test it, and you can have a wonderful server architecture, but your end customer isn't interested in your server architecture. Your end customer just wants to know what your product is about and what he can do with that product, but not what this fancy stuff on the server is doing. So we're just focusing today on the front end, and yeah, we're just leaving out the back end, and yeah, that's what it's all about.
So now we have a big picture, so let's go a little bit deeper into the into the next yeah, implementation and tool chain process. So we have a promising idea, and after we understood the business domain of the customer and everybody gets well prepared, we have prepared the project, the setup, story mapping workshops, etc. We start with the implementation. So for the implementation, the most important thing is the environment. We can't spend that much effort in setting up new development environments, new environments in general, in order to get an idea as fast as possible on the market.
Who is a developer of you? Okay. Who spends the first 2 weeks of a project with setting up everything? Okay.
1 week?
Okay, then you are on the right way. So less than 1 day. This is the goal. So why do you spend days or weeks with setting up? This is just bringing no advantage on your project. So this is just the basic setup for your project, and you need to implement the product and the idea and not the infrastructure.
Yeah, and do not reinvent the wheel is one of these keywords. And yeah, for an environment, yeah, we need virtualization. So every developer should have the same environment. This means not every developer should use this operating system and this IDE. No, it just means the project environment, like a VM where the whole project is running on, and every developer should have the same environment. If there are changes, modifications or whatever, it should be as fast as possible deployed within the development team, and also on the different environments like staging, QA, production, etc. So therefore, some, I think, famous tools are, for example, Puppet, Vagrant with VirtualBox, or Docker, as we heard on some talks today. Yeah, it always depends on the project and on the customer what's the best solution, but yeah, therefore we have a tool chain and we can choose, yeah, just the best fitting solution. Just an ad for one open source solution like this developer VMs. We collected the experience over the last few years setting up projects and building virtualization, it's virtualized environments, and bundled this in Wasted. Wasted means a web application stack for extreme development. You can find it on GitHub. It's an easily environment which you can configure per configuration file, adding new modules, disabling some stuff, just do a provision, and everybody has it.
So with that setup, we're down to about an hour for the setup for a new project. So this is the goal where you go for. So next step, you have the infrastructure. We use package management tools to set up the rest of our application. So don't go for jQuery.com and download everything, but use package manager. There are a lot of, because it's JavaScript and every day a new JavaScript framework appears. So the most important ones are Bower and NPM, and there are several other. And yeah, you just should use one of them because they are dealing with some problems you will face during the development, which is dealing with dependencies. So if package A requires package B and C, this package manager just resolves those dependencies, and it takes care of versioning conflicts and version updates and stuff like that. So it's just a very easy way of deal with those common problems. So yeah, in order to introduce one of them, Bower, you go to your command line and just type Bower install, and install Angular or Require.js or whatever you want. There's nearly every JavaScript library available in Bower and NPM. So just pick the right tool for your project, and it's all stored in a configuration file, so it's documented in your source code and with the package name and the version number, so you don't have any problems with that. Based on those libraries, we step one step forward. As I mentioned, we're lazy people, so we don't like to write a lot. So we use scaffolding in our project. And one of the most popular frameworks in that direction is Yeoman, which provides you generators, and that generate the basic code for your project. So if you're using Angular, for example, you can generate those basic structure for controllers or modules and stuff like that, just by going onto your command line and type one command, and then everything pops out. And if you have a unique project, which we all have, you can just create your own generators, which are unique for your project, and then generate automatically your structure, and don't have to write that much. As Johannes said, don't reinvent the wheel. Just use libraries and frameworks, especially in this fast-moving world where you have to be the first on the market. Just pick all of the tools. There are plenty of in JavaScript. So to visualize data, to provide data structures and so on, just go on Google for your problem and be sure someone else just solves your problem, and then pick the tool.
So now we had an overview about the tool chain, but let's go again more in details and let's take a look at the backend.
Which we promised we won't cover, but in fact we do, but very lightweight.
Yeah, so the backend itself is pretty important and needed. I think that's clear for persisting the data, holding a part of the business logic, and for interacting with the data. So I think most of the projects have some common requirements, which are, for example, a registration process, the authentication itself, and the data management. So this is, there are still existing packages for this, and it don't depends on the technology. Nearly for every stack, there are some things available. And for the communication between the front end and the backend, we're usually using REST interfaces on our projects. This is pretty nice, and I think one of the best possible solutions for decoupling the front end and the back end. So additionally, WebSockets can be added too if it's required, just for interacting and playing around with the data. So, as in early stages on new projects, it's not that important that there is a CMS, for example, where you can change the content of the website. So there's no priority on this in the early stages. The priority is just on getting ideas fast and getting feedback fast from the companies, so the development should be improved and efficient. But in that case, for example, if we have some dynamic data in different languages at the early stages, we just change them directly in the database, or for the database for nearly every database system. There are some UI solutions where you can interact with, or simply changing them in the templates itself.
So our customers can stand the pain to connect to the SQL database and modify the records by themselves, just to focus on delivering the end customer product to the web and to the end customers.
Yeah, so which technologies are we using in the backend, may some of you ask? We are using two popular technology stacks. The first one is just a PHP. MySQL Redis with PostgreSQL and a framework of choice, and it's mostly Symfony 2 right now. The other stack is a mean stack with Node.js, MongoDB, MySQL, Redis, Express, Angular, or other frameworks.
Okay, this was it for the backend. So we keep it lean and fast moving. And the same is true for the front end. And in the front end, we focus on delivering features to the customer. So we are using libraries and frameworks. One of the most popular ones is AngularJS, because that provides a lot of ready-to-use components, starting from data grids and date pickers and so on. So we're just using ready components and stack them together and just write the glue code needed to interact with those components. And Angular provides this structure for the application, so it's not just a collection of jQuery plugins, but it's maintainable and readable, and you can extend your prototype. And if your prototype is that good, you can move it to a ready product and move on with that solution. On top of or parallel to this structure framework, you should use module loaders. And module loaders give you the chance to modularize your application. If you're building your application in modules, you have the chance to enable or disable certain features and test them independently. And the module loader takes care of loading scripts, dealing with dependencies and stuff like that. And you're basically building microservices in the front end, which is just feature-based. Yeah, as I just told you, for loading files, optimizing, and dependency resolvement. And as I just said, it's all about visibility of some kind of information. You have to create some fancy pictures or charts or whatever. And D3 is one of the mightiest libraries when it comes to showing data. And this is one of the problems of this library. So in the most cases, you will use some abstraction library for your origin library, which sounds a little bit strange. But if you're on to D3, you know what I mean, because it's huge and mighty and, yeah, scary. The positive thing is that D3 builds on standards, which is very important when it comes to delivering things fast. And D3 builds on HTML, CSS, and SVG, so pretty standard stuff, and you can use all of this.
So who of you is writing tests for your code? Nearly everybody. Testing is good. Testing is good, especially to ensure that the software or the parts of the software are working as expected.
What is the biggest problem in tests? Write them. Why?
Maintaining, yeah, that's one keyword. So writing tests is good, but in an early stage where you don't know where this project is growing in this direction, you shouldn't test everything.
So you're officially allowed to not write tests in startups, and that's the result is startup code, which is another word for crap, because no structure, no tests, no documentation, nothing at all, but just a couple of features and the knowledge if the features are working or not. And you have to refactor them.
But that's okay, and there was this word refactoring. So on our project, we are writing tests, but only for these components where we know this is the core and they will not change that frequently as the other assumptions which were developed. So if we have some parts of the product which are successfully and just being part of the application longer and longer, it's important to just maintain them and modernize them, building a big, just bringing quality into it and write tests for it. So the topic therefore is just when you begin with new code and you know it's maybe changed or just throw it away some days earlier as expected or something like that. Don't write tests for it and keep in focus like this prototype code. So we have the experience with some customers, they build up some prototypes, like when you have a new idea, and there was a new idea and a new feature and a new feature, and then you have this thing of a prototype, which is just a monolith, and the maintenance itself, it's the hell.
And the good thing is you have a lot of testers, which are your end customers. They will test for you. And if they know they're testing your product, they're mostly fine with that.
Yeah, you have to minimize the risk at developing new stuff. So this means no training on the job. For example, if you heard about a new technology or about new frameworks, don't use it in this project right now. So there are other good things, and there is other space where you can improve it.
But we just talk about innovations.
Yeah, that's innovations. This doesn't mean that we are using just legacy code and frameworks which are in the age. No, we just keep it up to date, and therefore, yeah, we're using training off the job. Training off the job means you should not interrupt the work, especially on projects where the time to deliver should be as close as possible. Just do it on an offsite event. For example, there are some things like the Slack time. For example, we have it each second Friday where we are in the office and just pitch our idea in the morning, or work with colleagues on their idea, and this could be some assumption, new technologies, frameworks, just playing around. Another method would be, in the agile way, creating spikes and prototypes during the sprint, during the development, but do it time-boxed. And there you can play around with new technologies. And yeah, if you're getting more and more fitter in, use it for the project.
And now it gets very hard for you.
Yeah, this was the key outcome. Keep it as simple as possible, and just put abstraction there in these places in the code where it's needed. So a lot of engineers have like this feeling, yeah, I want to do the fancy architecture and yeah, just build it for 100%. No, it should be just, yeah, it should just be there for validating your assumptions. Is it working or not? If it's working, then you can do the modernization and yeah, bring quality into it.
There will be time for engineering, but not during this first period of your project. So now we have all the stuff together. Now we have to find out if we have a good idea or not. And this is where it comes to business. We need those hypotheses. So we need to talk to the non-tech guys and find out what this product should do. And there are several methods in order to get those ideas. One of them is those canvas stuff. You have posters which are pinned on the walls, and you write stories, and you create personas and everything, just in order to find out how your big idea can be split up into smaller ideas and smaller stories. And yeah, create features which can be tested.
Sorry for the interruption. For my own interest, who knows this business model canvas or lean model canvas? Who had some experience with it?
So this is just some sort of business plan for startups, which is lightweight, which is not. Create a book of 150 pages and go to the bank. It's just about what should your company be about, and how do you plan to earn money, and how do you target your audience.
Yeah, and that's changeable, because as a startup you have this idea and it would change. So normally you update this canvas in a regular basis, like on a weekly basis or monthly basis, and you add some new stuff on it, and yeah, then you can compare them just for the information what have changed from the first one to the last one. And
it's not engraved in stone. So one of those assumptions could be, I want 10,000 new registrations within the first month. Or each user generates 10 posts every week, so if it comes to data generation. Or an average registration process takes 2 minutes. So all they have together is they're very specific, they're measurable. And if it comes to forming those hypotheses, they should be either smart or invest, which is basically nearly the same. you should include some metrics in your hypothesis which you can validate. So I want to be the greatest company in the world. How do you measure it? I want more users than everyone else. But if you say, okay, I want to have 10,000 new registrations, you can go to your database and build a query and then just get the result. So they should have, they should be measurable and they should be time-bounded. So you just fix your hypothesis that you can check on them.
So measuring is quite interesting in this case because you can't manage what you can't measure or you can't optimize what you can't measure. In this case, yeah, it's quite important. For example, who of you is using Google Analytics on his projects? Who of you is doing regularly interpreting the data, the collected data?
Why are the other ones using Google Analytics when they don't view the data?
Or another analytics tool.
Oh, nice one.
That's nice. So that's one of the biggest mistakes, like we're using just a tracking, for example, Google Analytics or Pivik, but we do not interpret the data. We just see, hey, there are that many page views or unique users, but yeah, maybe if this fits to your business, then it's okay. But normally you combine them to some metrics. For example, how long does the duration? How long is the duration? By just coming the first time on the website till the registration or till the buy, something like that.
And the good thing is it comes to numbers, and this is what we IT people like. So, yeah, everything's based on numbers.
Measure stuff, yeah, and the lean way is like before you build something, you create your metrics where you can define and measure if it's something successful or not. So in this case, you should record pretty much every action, and it's quite simple. By your tracking tool of your favorite and then interpret it. And normally you have this metrics before, but collecting the interactions from the user itself is quite important and can be analyzed afterwards too. It's not just about the events, it's also about the page loads, about durations, how long took server response, how's the average lead time for a registration, or something like that. Or which errors appears, when do they appear, after which step do they appear.
When do your customers exit your application?
And something like that. It was quite interesting about this key metrics and cohort analysis. I think it was the second talk about Google Photos, the app, where it just gives us the direction where we go. So logging and measurement is important, but it shouldn't stop or slow down the application. So there are some practices which are recommended by some smaller, how I should say without finger pointing, by some smaller websites. They provide solutions, but the solution slows down the page, so they do it asynchronous. And they do it synchronously, but not asynchronous. And they slow down the page, therefore. But the most common tools, especially when you're using your own logging mechanism, keep focus on it. It shouldn't slow down the page. Life science. Measuring the data doesn't mean not only providing it to some analytic stuff where I can see the behavior of my users and how which features are interacting with the user or the other way together. It's also important for us as engineers, for example, how's the health of my application, like are the logins working, do the registration processes working, for example, for an online shop. For an e-commerce company, it's quite important, for example, that the whole payment process is working. If it's not working, there is something If there is something broken, they have to react as fast as possible in order to just rebuild the whole pipeline and the flow. And therefore, it's important to find problems as quick as possible.
In any other case, you won't earn any money, because if your payment process is broken, for example, your company is broken.
So about measuring, it's quite important to do assumptions before you do anything, before you create a new lean iteration. And you have to synchronize all these values regularly. It makes no sense just collecting them and then doing nothing with the data. Data can tell us pretty much everything, how the users interact with our system, how they behave, and how they would behave with a new assumption in order to get the right direction. So tools of choice, as mentioned, there is Google Analytics and Piwik. And Google Analytics, just for a quick overview, as well as Piwik, it's not just about measuring how often the page was loaded, how many page views, and something like this. It's quite deep, and you can get this bunch of informations when you combine this data stream, which is quite interesting. They provide cohort analysis, etc., etc.
So it's basically all about involving the end user into the development process of your application. So we need feedback. We need it in a very timely manner. So in the best case, the user is a direct part of the development process, either directly or indirectly. Indirectly through this analytics tools, and directly through very old school forums or FAQs, feedback forms. Put everywhere a feedback form. Everywhere is a button where the user can give you feedback. Provide the user some gamification. If the user submits a new feature request which gets accepted, or a new bug ticket, he will reward it with something for this interaction. Get your users into the development process.
And it's not possible, or you should do it online as well. And another possibility, which is quite nice when developing new features, or before you start develop them in order to get quick response and quick feedback, is like, for example, coffee shop tests. So you have an idea, you make some scribbles or some prototypes, go out to a coffee shop, just go to the people and ask them if they are interested in order to give you feedback. Go to your target group where you find them, and just get interesting feedback as early as possible. It's the same with the onboarding process. So we as engineers are good in writing fancy stuff, and just providing the whole technology for doing cool things. But it's also important, and there is, for example, UX is very important. The whole UX for onboarding the user, for example, taking the user at his hand, giving him a good feeling. Like when he comes to a registration page, you can explain him what for and why he should provide this data, for example. It's just the onboarding project, which goes not only for the registration, also for user interactions, like checking out new products, what happens next, giving the user a good feeling as soon as possible in this process. So the third and the last question is, how do I get a quick response? So we are not talking about, we are talking about user response and feedback from them, but there is a base which is strictly required for that, required or recommended, I'd say. And this is continuous deployment on your project. You should invent it and create, setting it up as soon as possible in order that deployment is as fast as possible, and it needs not much effort. For example, you can do it by a click, by a mouse click, or it's automatically by itself.
So you need continuous deployment even for your first only HTML and CSS pages in order to get into this workflow. So you want to release very quickly, and this has to be supported by some automation.
Yeah, the effort creating new releases should be as small as possible, and it should not, a release shouldn't mean like, hey, we release tomorrow, so the next days or the days after it, we definitely know we live in fear because there are some bugs which are, I don't know, unknown and something like that. This would happen like when you do continuous deployment afterwards, like you started with it, deploy it manually and things like that. But when you do it as soon as possible automatically, this feeling, this fear is not there. About the fear, it's like on new features, you should always implement feature toggles. With a feature toggle, you just can enable or disable a feature, a page, a route, access to the backend APIs, or something like that.
Who does use feature toggles? So you don't have to worry about that. In the easiest case, it's just an if statement to enable or disable a certain module of your application. So just consider using them because they're quite cool. So you can just switch on or off certain features.
Yeah, the best way is have a configuration file in one place where you can enable and just toggling all the features, routes, whatever you want. And this is also a nice requirement for the next step,
which is A/B testing. And a company I visited just a couple of days ago are using this very excessively. They're using whole countries as beta testers and provide some features in one country and in another one not. And this makes heavy use of these feature toggles because they have several features, the same feature in different implementations. And they can say, okay, if a user from Spain comes onto my page, then he gets the first implementation. If a user from Italy comes, he gets the second implementation. And if a British user comes onto my application, he gets the third one. So this gives you the chance to get an idea which process or which implementation is the best and which implementation you should use and the other one should be thrown away. And the core of this is feature toggles, modularization, and configuration of your application. And this should be supported by your infrastructure and the libraries and stuff you're using within your application. And to support that, build one module per feature in order to keep it encapsulated and turn on or off this feature. And if you're not using a feature anymore, you can just throw it away and don't have any trash in your source code. And in the best case, you're just using a folder structure for this and then just throw away a certain folder and that's it. And very important, modernize your application continuously. So don't stick with your startup code, but make it better each step you take. So if you find some crappy code, just take a little bit of time and make it just a little bit better. So, yeah.
And it's just not a time, it's definitely a question of time because we have a lot of projects. They are built up on prototypes and they grow and grow and grow and they are unmaintainable. Just because they didn't put in the space where they can modernize parts of it. So I think this is a common mistake which is done by especially new projects or new projects which has to develop fast, which has to grow fast when it comes to the amount of features. It's just getting a monolith. So modernization is always important. If you're not doing it, I think, yeah, it's typical topic for it is technical debt. As more time as there is between, yeah, modernize it, as yeah, more it costs.
Okay, what we learned in that process, and hopefully what you learned in the last hour or so.
Yeah, it's like allow mistakes. It's a question of the culture, in my point of view. Like how is the company or how is the setup dealing with mistakes, with errors, and yeah, errors can happen, and you should definitely learn from them. But it's not that important about the mistakes, because it's more like, yeah, when it comes to errors.
So don't take pictures of your colleagues who broke the build with rabbit ears or something and put them on Facebook. This is not a good style. Make errors, make mistakes, break builds, break everything, but be able to react on that and fix them, and yeah, be sure that a certain error doesn't appear 2 or 3 times in a row.
Pardon, please?
No, not on checkout process, because that's very vital for your company. And if your checkout process is broken days and days, so it's not very good. Fix them very quick.
Yeah, the next important thing is just provide space for education, for learning new stuff, for trying out new stuff. Either this is a spike or just a slack time, or yeah, a time boxed space regularly for improving your skills and keep to be updated.
And use your users, or abuse your users as testers. Just include them. They're thankful for every new feature, and if they participate in the development process of your application, they like using your application because they're in fact part of it.
This is called the early adopters, and if you have a new idea, just try to find your early adopters as soon as possible, because these people give you the most important feedback as quick as possible, and they spread just the information because they really love your application. But yeah, the thing about it it's pretty hard to find some early adopters which are that into it, so this could take a while.
IntelliJ is in fact very good in this. You can Twitter them or just create a new ticket for them with a new feature request, and they react within hours or at the maximum days to your feature request. And this is very cool if you see in the next release that your feature request is implemented. So how cool is this?
So now it's time for questions. You can also reach us on Twitter.
Or at a beer.
At a beer afterwards, looking forward. Yeah.
So my question is, can you please rephrase the sentence about unit testing? Which part of code do you think is valuable to add test? Which one is not valuable?
For example, the user authentication or a login process, parts of the application which won't change in the future, like the core of the system. These are the most basic ones, and the other things, that depends on the features which you've implemented, if they are successful and if they will stay longer, and they usually get changed, but not that frequently, like in the early days.
So you have shared components, for example, and this should be tested because they're used in various locations in your application, and if you have an error in this code, it affects your whole application, and this shouldn't be the case.
Okay, so imagine you have developed a feature that is for kind of A/B testing, so you would like to keep it only for 2 weeks. So it will be good to write test for it or no?
No, for 2 weeks, the effort you put into writing tests is not worth it. You can implement another feature in that time. Just roll it out and keep it there.
it depends not only on the duration, it's just, okay, if it's that small piece of code which has less function and, yeah, but it's maybe quite important because it's a clue for something, then, yeah, why not? So you have to turn it out by yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it. Ah, there is a question.
Sorry to take your time, but I would ask you about how often usually you wish to create new functionality for certain parts of page, like white boxes or date picker. Is it usually like constantly you're thinking about writing new stuff or new parts for this functionality?
Yes, we in fact we have an idea backlog for the most applications, and you constantly write new stuff. You constantly work on 2 or 3 features at a time and release them and keep it growing and growing, because once you don't implement new features, the other ones on the market are just stepping over you, and you have lost.
I mean, you talking about not inventing wheel, so you stick to existing features, or you're trying to spend some time to create custom extendable functionality for white boxes.
Good point, like, yeah, reinventing the wheel all the time. At my last project, for example, there was a huge data table which has to be displayed. So therefore we used some existing solutions and just put in the data, and then there were some change requests like, okay, we don't want to filter the table just by one column, we want a multi-column filter, and we want a free text field which just goes over all the data and displays the right one, highlight them, and it was like an application which displayed about, I think, 80,000 lines. A table, and therefore we choose one existing solution and we tried another one, and yeah, the assumption before we used them was like, that's a lot of data, maybe we should write them by our own and implement it step by step. So we tried out 2 or 3 existing solutions for that, and afterwards, yeah, we throw them away and build our own solution.
And still there's no perfect solution for a data table.
Yeah, because it's that individual.
Okay, then thanks a lot, and beer garden should be open.
Thank you, guys.